There's something deeply wrong with Golden Freddy, not in the way the other animatronics are wrong, not in the mechanical horror of servos grinding beneath synthetic skin, or the uncanny wrongness of dead eyes staring through the darkness. No, Golden Freddy's wrongness runs deeper, more fundamental. Because Golden Freddy shouldn't exist at all. Every other animatronic in Five Nights at Freddy's follows rules, patterns. They move through hallways. They appear in doorways. They exist within the physical space of the building, bound by the same reality you inhabit as you sit trembling in that security office. But Golden Freddy simply appears, materializes. One moment your office is empty and the next he's there, slumped, motionless, staring, and then you're dead. No movement, no warning, no sound of footsteps echoing down corridors, just instant, absolute termination. For over a decade, Golden Freddy has remained the single most enigmatic mystery in the entire Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. A character so thoroughly woven into the deepest secrets of the lore that understanding Golden Freddy means understanding the very foundation upon which Scott Cawthon built this empire of horror. But here's what makes this mystery so extraordinarily complex. Golden Freddy isn't just one character. Golden Freddy might not even be one soul. The rabbit hole surrounding this entity goes deeper than perhaps any other element in FNAF, deeper than the identity of the purple guy, deeper than the timeline debates, deeper than the question of which ending is canon. Because Golden Freddy exists at the intersection of every major mystery in the franchise. The Bite of 83, the missing children incident, the identity of the crying child, the meaning behind Ultimate Custom Night, the resolution of Happiest Day. The very nature of what happens after death in this universe. And after thousands of hours of community investigation, after dozens of games and books and hidden clues scattered across a decade of storytelling, we still don't have every answer, but we have enough to construct something remarkable. Something complete. A full picture that, even with its remaining gaps and unanswered questions, reveals the true scope of what Golden Freddy represents. Not just a character, not just a ghost story, but the embodiment of everything wrong with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The consequence of every terrible decision. The weight of guilt made manifest. This is the complete story of Golden Freddy. Every appearance, every clue, every theory, every contradiction. And if you genuinely enjoy these kinds of deep, extensive explorations into FNAF lore, the kind that don't cut corners or simplify the complex debates that make this community so fascinating, then you'll want to subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of documentary we'll continue creating. The long form, nothing held back, every mystery examined type of content that treats this lore with the depth it deserves. Now, let's begin where every mystery in Five Nights at Freddy's truly begins. Not in the horror, not in the tragedy, but in the moment before everything went wrong. Before Golden Freddy, there was Fredbear, and before Fredbear became synonymous with tragedy, he was simply a dream, the mascot of what should have been a beautiful beginning. Understanding Golden Freddy requires understanding this distinction, because they are not the same entity, even though the names are often used interchangeably by the community. Fredbear was the original, the first animatronic character created for what would eventually become the Fazbear Empire. And his origin point was a small establishment that predated everything else, Fredbear's Family Diner. The year was sometime in the late 1970s, and two men stood at the beginning of what they believed would be a revolutionary entertainment venture. Their names were Henry Emily and William Afton, partners, friends, two men with complementary skills and a shared vision of creating something children would love. Henry was the engineer, the creator, the man whose technical brilliance could bring mechanical characters to life with unprecedented sophistication. William was the businessman, the pragmatist, though his role went deeper than simple corporate management. William understood psychology. What frightened people? What attracted them? What made them tick? Together they created Fredbear's Family Diner, a small restaurant featuring two Springlock animatronics, Fredbear, a golden bear, and Spring Bonnie, a yellow rabbit. These weren't like the animatronics that would come later. These were hybrid suits, using Springlock technology that allowed them to function in two distinct modes. They could operate as stationary animatronics, performing for children with programmed movements and pre-recorded dialogue. But they could also be worn as costumes, the animatronic components compressed and locked back by a series of spring-loaded mechanisms, creating enough space inside for a human performer to climb in and wear the suit. It was ingenious, cost-effective. A single suit serving dual purposes, reducing the need for separate costumes and animatronics. But it was also phenomenally dangerous. The Springlock mechanisms that held back the metal components were under constant tension. Moisture could trigger them. Impact could trigger them. Even breathing too heavily in the wrong conditions could cause the locks to fail. And when they failed, those metal components, those animatronic skeleton pieces that had been compressed into the walls of the suit, would snap back into their original positions, with a person still inside. The result was predictable, catastrophic, the kind of workplace accident that should have ended the entire concept of Springlock suits immediately. But this was decades before the events of the main FNAF timeline, before the murders, before the haunting. This was the innocent beginning when Fredbear was just a character and children laughed, and parents had no reason to fear what lurked behind the painted eyes of an entertainment robot. Fredbear himself was visually distinct, golden yellow, a top hat, a bow tie, a microphone often held in one paw. He was cheerful, welcoming, the face of the brand. And from all available evidence, Fredbear's Family Diner was successful enough to expand. Successful enough that Henry and William eventually partnered with a larger corporate entity to create Fazbear's Pizza, a bigger establishment with more animatronics, more locations, more ambitious entertainment. But Fredbear remained special, the original. Even as Freddy Fazbear became the primary mascot of the new pizza chain, Fredbear never disappeared entirely. The Springlock suits continued to be used. Special events, private parties, back rooms. And this is where the timeline becomes absolutely critical, because what happened to Fredbear is what created Golden Freddy. The transformation wasn't immediate. It was gradual. A slow corruption that occurred across multiple tragedies, multiple deaths, multiple souls converging on a single focal point. And the first tragedy, the one that changed everything, happened in 1983, the bite of '83. We see it play out in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, though the game never explicitly names the year. A young boy, the crying child, terrorized by his older brother and his brother's friends. The boy is afraid of the animatronics, deeply, psychologically afraid. He sees something wrong with them. Something the other children don't see. Nightmarish visions plague him, transforming the already unsettling animatronics into creatures of pure horror, with razor teeth and exposed mechanisms and surgical precision in their capacity to inspire terror. The crying child doesn't want to go to Fredbear's family diner. He begs not to go. He cries. He hides. But his brother, wearing a foxy mask, continues to torment him, along with friends wearing masks of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. They think it's funny, just pranks. Just scaring their younger sibling. Harmless fun, until it isn't. We watch it happen from the crying child's perspective. It's his birthday. He's at Fredbear's family diner, or possibly a Freddy Fazbear's pizza location where Fredbear is performing. The details of the exact location remain debated, but what happens next is clear. The older brother and his friends pick up the crying child. He's sobbing, begging them to stop. They carry him toward the stage. Toward Fredbear, who stands there performing, mouth opening and closing in rhythm with whatever song he's singing, and they shove the crying child's head directly into Fredbear's mouth. The animatronic's jaws close. There's a sound. A crunch that the minigame audio translates as a simple 8-bit noise, but that represents something horrific. Fredbear's jaws have crushed the crying child's skull. The frontal lobe specifically, blood, screaming. The performance stops. Everything stops. The crying child is rushed to a hospital. We see him there, lying in a bed, medical equipment beeping around him, flowers, a toy phone, plushies of the animatronics that tormented him, and a mysterious Fredbear plush that has appeared throughout the mini-games, speaking to him in text boxes colored in a way that suggests this might not be a simple toy. The plush speaks words that have become infamous in the community. I will put you back together. Then the final minigame plays. The crying child's hospital room, the sound of a flatline, darkness. The crying child dies. This is the moment. The first fracture. The event that transforms Fredbear from a simple animatronic into something else. But here's where the mystery becomes complex, because the crying child's death alone doesn't explain Golden Freddy. It explains the corruption of Fredbear. It explains the tragedy associated with the character. It might even explain the beginning of the haunting, depending on which theory you subscribe to regarding how souls attach to animatronics in this universe. But Golden Freddy, as he appears in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, exhibits properties that suggest more than a single spirit. More than a simple haunting. Golden Freddy doesn't behave like the other animatronics because Golden Freddy isn't like the other animatronics. He's a convergence point. A vessel containing multiple identities, multiple tragedies, multiple deaths all centered on a single animatronic design. To understand how this convergence happened, we need to examine the second major tragedy, the event that directly created the entity we know as Golden Freddy, the missing children incident. Sometime after the bite of '83, though the exact timeline remains one of the most debated aspects of FNAF lore, William Afton murdered 5 children. We know this from multiple sources. Newspaper clippings in FNAF 1, minigames in FNAF 2 and FNAF 3, the Give Gifts, Give Life sequence, the Save Them minigame, the Foxy Go 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 minigame. Collectively, they tell the story of William Afton, dressed in the spring Bonnie suit, luring children into a back room. What happened in that back room is never shown explicitly, but the result is clear. 5 dead children. Their bodies hidden, stuffed inside the animatronic suits where they wouldn't be found immediately. The smell eventually gave it away, according to newspaper clippings mentioning complaints about odor and mucus around the animatronic's eyes and mouths. But by then, something impossible had occurred. The children's souls remained. They didn't move on. They attached to the animatronics, possessing them, transforming them from simple entertainment robots into something aware, something angry, something seeking revenge against the person who murdered them and the establishment that allowed it to happen. The 5 children's identities are confirmed through various sources. Gabriel became Freddy, Jeremy became Bonnie, Susie became Chica, Fritz became Foxy. And the 5th child, the one whose name would remain hidden for years, became Golden Freddy. But which Golden Freddy suit did this 5th child possess? This is where the details become crucial, because by the time of the missing children incident, the original Fredbear Springlock suit that killed the crying child was almost certainly out of service. Springlock failures had occurred. The company had sealed the safe rooms where the Springlock suits were kept. Employees were instructed never to use them again. Yet Golden Freddy appears in FNAF 1, set in a location that's explicitly not the original Fredbear's family diner. This is a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, one of several that operated during the timeline. So what suit is Golden Freddy? The most evidence-supported answer is that Golden Freddy is a decommissioned Fredbear suit that was left behind when the company tried to distance itself from the Springlock animatronics. Not the original suit from Fredbear's family diner necessarily, but one of potentially multiple Fredbear suits that existed across different locations. When the 5th missing child was murdered, their body was hidden in this old, abandoned suit. Just like the others were hidden in Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. But unlike the others, Golden Freddy's suit wasn't operational. It wasn't being used. It was rotting in a back room, sealed away, forgotten. And when the 5th child's soul attached to it, something different happened. The suit never fully activated. Golden Freddy, as we encounter him in FNAF 1, appears slumped, sitting. He materializes in your office without ever moving through the building. His eyes are empty or sometimes illuminated with pure white pupils. He doesn't follow the rules the other animatronics follow because he isn't bound by physical mechanisms the same way they are. He's more spirit than machine, more presence than entity, and his name wasn't Golden Freddy originally. The community gave him that name based on his appearance, a golden version of Freddy Fazbear. But in the game files of FNAF 1, he's referred to as Yellow Bear. In the lore, he's connected to Fredbear. The distinction between Fredbear and Golden Freddy is that Fredbear is the original character, the intended design, the mascot as he was supposed to be. Golden Freddy is what that design became after death, after possession, after corruption. He's a ghost wearing the image of Fredbear. But here's where the story becomes even more complex. Because in FNAF 2, we encounter what appears to be 2 different versions of Golden Freddy. The withered animatronics in that game include a withered Golden Freddy, a decrepit version that appears slumped in the office just like in FNAF 1, but with a more deteriorated appearance. And then there are hallucinations. A floating Freddy head with glowing white eyes that appears in the hallways. Is this the same entity? 2 different entities, different manifestations of the same spirit? The answer requires understanding FNAF 2's place in the timeline. Despite being the second game released, FNAF 2 is a prequel set in 1987. The withered animatronics are the original characters from a previous location, now damaged and being used for parts to build the new toy animatronics. Withered Golden Freddy is one of these old animatronics, decommissioned and left in the back, but he still appears, still manifests in your office, still crashes your game with his signature move if you stare at him too long. And the floating head hallucination suggests that Golden Freddy's presence isn't limited to the physical suit. He can appear in multiple forms, multiple manifestations. This is the first major clue that Golden Freddy represents something more than the other spirits. The other animatronics are bound to their suits. They move, they hunt, they follow predictable patterns even in their corrupted state. But Golden Freddy is freed from those limitations. He exists somewhere between physical and spiritual, between real and hallucination. And then FNAF 3 changes everything. In FNAF 3, set 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed, we encounter Springtrap, the animatronic containing William Afton's corpse after a Springlock failure killed him. The horror attraction Fazbear's Fright burns down at the end of the game, seemingly destroying Springtrap. But hidden throughout FNAF 3 are minigames, and one of them is called Happiest Day. In Happiest Day, we see a birthday party. A child wearing a mask sits at a table. Other children, also wearing masks representing the animatronic characters, appear one by one as you complete the other minigames. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, they gather around the table. Cake appears. And finally, a sixth child, the one sitting at the table, removes their mask. It's Golden Freddy's mask. The implication is clear. This is the fifth missing child, the one who possessed Golden Freddy, and this minigame represents their moment of peace, their release, the birthday party they never got to have because William Afton murdered them. Completing Happiest Day is meant to free the souls, to let them rest. The minigame ends with all the children's masks lying on the ground, empty. Their souls, presumably, have moved on. But if Golden Freddy's soul was freed in Happiest Day, then why does Golden Freddy continue to appear in subsequent games? This is the question that splits the community into different theoretical camps. Some believe Happiest Day did free the souls, and Golden Freddy's later appearances are either different spirits or echoes. Others believe Happiest Day represents a possible future, not a confirmed event. And some believe that Golden Freddy is unique among the missing children because Golden Freddy contains not one soul but two, the crying child and the fifth missing child, both attached to the same animatronic, both sharing the same vessel. One died in 1983 from the bite. The other died sometime later during the missing children incident. Two separate tragedies, two separate souls, but both connected to Fredbear, to Golden Freddy, to the golden bear that represents everything wrong with Fazbear Entertainment. This is the Golden Duo theory, sometimes called Golden Both, and the evidence supporting it is substantial. The Survival Logbook, an official FNAF book released in 2017, contains a conversation between two spirits communicating through text in the margins. One spirit writes in faded text, asking questions. Another spirit responds by altering existing text in the book, spelling out answers. The faded text spirit asks, "What do you see?" The altered text spirit responds, "I can't see." The faded text is associated with the crying child through various contextual clues in the logbook. The altered text spirit is someone different, someone who communicates by changing what's already there. And through a complex puzzle involving numerical codes and crossword answers, this second spirit spells out a name, Cassidy. This is the fifth missing child, the one who possessed Golden Freddy. Her name is Cassidy, and she's communicating with the crying child through the logbook, suggesting both spirits have some connection to the same place, the same animatronic. Cassidy's name appears again in the Fazbear Fright story, The Man in Room 1280, where a character named Andrew, described as a young boy with curly black hair, keeps William Afton alive through sheer vengeful will, refusing to let him die even as his body is horrifically burned. Andrew is widely interpreted as a parallel to Cassidy, the spirit who refuses to let William rest. And this brings us to Ultimate Custom Night. Released in 2018, Ultimate Custom Night presents itself as a challenge mode where you face 50 animatronics in endless combinations. But hidden throughout the game are voice lines and details suggesting this isn't just a gameplay challenge. This is a narrative, a story about someone being tormented, someone trapped in a personal hell, forced to relive terror again and again, unable to escape, unable to die. And one animatronic's voice line makes the nature of this hell explicit. Withered Chica, in one of her rare voice lines, says, "I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed, not the ones, the one, singular." And Golden Freddy appears throughout Ultimate Custom Night as one of the most dangerous animatronics, with a unique mechanic where you must avoid summoning him or face instant death. His presence is different from the others, more significant, more central to whatever is happening. The prevailing interpretation, supported by extensive evidence and Scott Cawthon's subtle confirmations through story parallels, is that Ultimate Custom Night is William Afton's personal hell. He's trapped there, being tormented by the spirits of the children he murdered. But one spirit is keeping him there. One spirit refuses to let him rest, refuses to let him move on, refuses to forgive. Cassidy, the one you shouldn't have killed, the spirit possessing Golden Freddy, the child who, unlike the others who found peace in happiest day, chose revenge over release, chose to keep William Afton suffering forever as punishment for what he did. But if Cassidy is the vengeful spirit keeping William in hell, and the crying child also has a connection to Golden Freddy, then what's the crying child's role? The answer to that question requires examining every piece of evidence across the entire franchise, every appearance of Golden Freddy, every clue Scott has hidden in games and books and coded messages. Because Golden Freddy's true nature, the complete story of who and what this entity represents, is perhaps the single most complex mystery Scott Cawthon ever created, and we're only beginning to unravel it. In FNAF 4, we play as a child experiencing nightmares. Nightmarish versions of the animatronics hunt us through a house, appearing at doors and in closets and transforming into grotesque creatures of psychological horror. For years, the community debated whose nightmares these were. The crying child's, reliving his trauma before death. The older brother's, consumed by guilt after causing his younger sibling's death. Or someone else entirely. The survival logbook provides clues. It shows images from the FNAF 4 house. The FNAF 1 office phone appears on the ground, drawn in the logbook. The book is framed as being filled out by Mike, a security guard, heavily implied to be Michael Afton, William's son. The connections suggest Michael is the one experiencing the FNAF 4 nightmares, possibly the older brother, now an adult, working as a security guard and being haunted by memories of what he did. But the Fredbear plush appears throughout FNAF 4, speaking to the crying child. "I will put you back together." Those words carry enormous weight because they suggest the crying child's story didn't end with his death. Something was meant to happen, some form of reconstruction, some way of preserving him. And if we follow the evidence that William was the crying child's father, a connection suggested through the FNAF 4 private room setting and sister locations plot involving William's children, then William had a motive to try to preserve his son, to save him somehow, to bring him back. This is where theories diverge into speculation, but the evidence points toward William experimenting with Remnant, a substance formed from molten metal mixed with the spiritual energy of possessed animatronics. Sister Location introduces the scooping room, where animatronics are torn apart and their remnant harvested. The implication is that William was trying to understand possession, to control it, possibly to resurrect his son by placing the crying child's soul into an animatronic. But what if that process failed? What if the crying child's soul was already attached to something else, already merged with Fredbear, the animatronic that killed him? And what if, years later, when Cassidy was murdered and her body was hidden in a decommissioned Fredbear suit, her soul joined the crying child's in the same vessel, two souls, two tragedies, two identities sharing Golden Freddy. The crying child, the innocent victim of an accident, still lost and confused and wanting to rest. And Cassidy, the murder victim consumed by rage, refusing to let William escape justice. This would explain Golden Freddy's unique properties, why he appears differently than the others, why he seems to exist in multiple places at once, why his behavior is so inconsistent across games. He's not one ghost. He's two with different motivations, different levels of awareness, different relationships to the living world. The floating head in FNAF 2 could be one spirit manifesting separately from the suit. The slumped form could be the other, still partially bound to the physical remains. The ability to appear in your office without warning could be the result of two spirits amplifying each other's supernatural presence. And in Ultimate Custom Night, perhaps both are present. Cassidy is the vengeful one, the spirit creating William's hell. But the crying child might be there too. The one you shouldn't have killed, from Withered Chica's voice line, potentially referring to William's own son. The death that started everything. The loss that drove William to his experiments and murders in some desperate attempt to understand death and reverse it. But this is where we must be careful to distinguish between confirmed evidence and interpretation. Here's what we know for certain. Fredbear was the original animatronic from Fredbear's Family Diner. The crying child died from the bite of 83 involving a Fredbear animatronic. 5 children were murdered and stuffed into animatronic suits, with the 5th child possessing a Golden Bear suit. Golden Freddy appears throughout the franchise with supernatural properties that differ from other animatronics. The 5th missing child's name is Cassidy. Cassidy appears to be the vengeful spirit tormenting William in Ultimate Custom Night. Happiest Day shows Golden Freddy receiving peace alongside the other children. Here's what remains theoretical, though supported by substantial evidence. The crying child's soul may also be connected to Golden Freddy, creating a two-soul situation. William Afton may be the crying child's father. The FNAF 4 nightmares may be Michael Afton's guilt-driven hallucinations. The Fredbear plush may represent someone trying to preserve the crying child's consciousness. Ultimate Custom Night may represent a literal hell rather than simply a gameplay mode. And here's what remains genuinely mysterious: whether Happiest Day successfully freed both souls or only one. Whether Golden Freddy still exists after the events of Pizzeria Simulator, where the animatronics are lured into a building and burned. What Golden Freddy's role is in the modern era of FNAF, with security breach and help wanted introducing new elements to the lore. Whether the Princess Quest ending, showing a princess freeing another spirit, represents Cassidy finally finding peace. What makes Golden Freddy so endlessly fascinating is that Scott Cawthon has intentionally kept these questions open. Even as he's confirmed other aspects of the lore, even as the franchise has moved forward in its timeline, Golden Freddy remains ambiguous. present in the code, present in the secrets, but never fully explained, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Because Golden Freddy represents the unknown, the unexplained, the ghost story that can't be rationalized away with mechanics and programming. He's the reminder that, underneath all the horror and tragedy of Five Nights at Freddy's, there are elements that resist simple answers. The suit is empty, but something's inside. The spirit should be at rest, but something's still hunting. The mystery should be solved, but something's still hidden. That's Golden Freddy. That's always been Golden Freddy. And understanding why requires going back through every single appearance, every mechanic, every secret across the entire franchise, examining not just what Golden Freddy does, but what Golden Freddy means. So let's trace his path through the series. Every game, every appearance, every clue. Because hidden in those details is the truth of what Golden Freddy has become, and what he might still be. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 introduces us to Golden Freddy in the most unsettling way possible. You're sitting in the security office, monitoring cameras, conserving power, trying to survive until 6 a.m. The animatronics move through the building following patterns you can learn to predict. Bonnie approaches from the left, Chica from the right. Foxy builds up momentum in Pirate Cove. Freddy moves through a specific sequence of cameras, getting closer with each movement. They're terrifying, yes, but they're consistent. They follow rules. Then you flip to camera 2B, the West Hall corner, and sometimes, rarely, sitting slumped against the wall, there's a golden bear. Decrepit. Hollow-eyed. The poster on the wall behind where Freddy usually appears has changed. Instead of Freddy's face, it shows this golden bear. But it's not a normal image. The poster flickers. Sometimes it's Freddy. Sometimes it's the golden bear. Sometimes it's a close-up of the golden bear's face with empty black eyes and white pupils, screaming. If you see the golden bear slumped in the hallway and then lower your monitor, he's in your office, not walking in, not appearing in the doorway. Just suddenly there, sitting directly in front of your desk, staring at you with those hollow eyes. The room darkens. Your interface disappears. You can't do anything. You can't close doors. You can't pull up cameras. You're frozen, staring at this impossible entity that has violated every rule the game established. Then your game crashes. The screen goes black, or sometimes displays a static-filled image with a distorted scream, and the application closes. Not a jump scare in the traditional sense. Not even a game over screen, just termination. This was the community's introduction to Golden Freddy. Not through story, not through explanation, but through an Easter egg so rare and so unlike anything else in the game that players initially thought it was a glitch, a bug. Some corrupted asset accidentally included in the files, but it wasn't a bug, it was intentional. Scott Cawthon had hidden something in his game that operated on completely different logic than everything else, and the community became obsessed. The first mystery was the name. In the game files, this character was labeled Yellow Bear, but the community quickly adopted Golden Freddy as the common name, recognizing the design as a golden version of Freddy Fazbear. The second mystery was the mechanic. How do you avoid him? Unlike every other animatronic, there's no clear pattern. You can't track his movement. You can't prevent his appearance by closing doors. The only defense is to immediately pull up your monitor the instant you see him in your office, which causes him to disappear. But why does that work? Why does raising the monitor dispel him when closing doors does nothing? Because Golden Freddy isn't physically present. He's a hallucination, an apparition, something that exists in your perception but not in physical space. Raising the monitor breaks that perception, dismisses the vision, and he vanishes. This established Golden Freddy's fundamental nature. He's not bound by the same physical laws as the other animatronics. He doesn't need to move through space to reach you. He simply manifests. And this property, this supernatural quality, would define every subsequent appearance. But even in FNAF 1, there were additional layers. Enter 1 to 9 to 8 to 7 into the poster on camera CAM2B, and the poster changes to the close-up of Golden Freddy's face, nicknamed "It's Me," due to the phrase that sometimes appears during hallucinations. This triggers Golden Freddy to appear in your office immediately. The code 1 to 9 to 8 to 7 was a direct reference. The community quickly realized, to the byte of 87, an incident mentioned by Phone Guy in Night 1. Phone Guy explains that the animatronics are allowed to walk around during the day, but there was an incident in 1987 where someone's frontal lobe was bitten out. This is separate from the byte of 83 we see in FNAF 4. Two different bytes, two different incidents. The byte of 83 involved the crying child and a Fredbear animatronic. The byte of 87 involved someone else, a different victim, and the animatronic responsible has never been definitively confirmed, though theories range from Mangle to Toy Chica to Fredbear again if he was still in service. But the connection between Golden Freddy and 1987 suggested something important. Golden Freddy is tied to the major tragedies, the bites, the murders, the deaths that haunt Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He's not just another animatronic. He's a nexus point for the horror. And then the community discovered something else. Something hidden so deeply that it required manipulating the game files to find. In the FNAF 1 files, there's an unused office setting labeled Golden Freddy Mode. If activated through file editing, it changes the game dramatically. The office becomes much darker. Golden Freddy appears far more frequently. The atmosphere transforms into something even more oppressive than the standard game. This mode was never meant to be accessible through normal gameplay, but its existence confirmed that Scott had plans for Golden Freddy that extended beyond a simple Easter egg. Golden Freddy was always meant to be special, different, more significant than his rare appearance rate suggested. Then FNAF 2 released, and everything became more complex. FNAF 2 is set in 1987 before the first game, at a new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. The old animatronics from the previous location, now labeled Withered, have been gutted for parts. New toy animatronics, sleeker and equipped with facial recognition technology tied to a criminal database, serve as the main entertainment. You play as Jeremy Fitzgerald, a night security guard working the week leading up to an incident that will cause the location to close. And Golden Freddy is there, but he's different. Withered Golden Freddy appears slumped in the office, just like in FNAF 1, but his design is deteriorated. His head seems too large. His body is incomplete, with visible wiring and missing segments. He's even more destroyed than the other withered animatronics, as if he's been abandoned longer, left to decay in ways the others haven't. The mechanic is similar. If he appears in your office, you must immediately pull up the monitor to make him disappear. But there's an addition. A floating Golden Freddy head now appears in the hallways, visible on certain cameras. When you see it, it moves closer to the office, and if you don't check a specific camera to make it disappear, it eventually appears in your office as a giant floating head, accompanied by a deep, distorted laugh, before causing a game over. Two manifestations. The slumped suit and the floating head. Both are Golden Freddy, but they appear separately, suggesting that Golden Freddy's presence isn't confined to a single form. He can appear as the physical suit. He can appear as a disembodied head. He can manifest in multiple ways simultaneously. But the most important revelation in FNAF 2 came from the minigames. The Give Gifts, Give Life minigame shows a puppet giving gifts to 4 dead children slumped in chairs. The children are gray, lifeless. The puppet places masks on their heads: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. And when the masks are placed, the children's eyes illuminate. They've been given life, possess the animatronics. Then a 5th child appears, isolated in a separate room, gray, dead, alone. The puppet approaches this child and the screen goes dark. When it returns, the child is wearing a Golden Freddy head and the minigame ends. This was confirmation. The 5th missing child possesses Golden Freddy, but the way the minigame presents this is different from the others. The other 4 children are together. The 5th is separate, isolated. And the transition to possession happens differently, in darkness, as if something about this process was unique. The Save Them minigame reinforces the horror. You control Freddy moving through a pizzeria where dead children are scattered throughout. Save Them appears on screen, but you can't. You can't interact with the bodies. You can't prevent what's already happened. And sometimes, Golden Freddy appears in the rooms, just standing there, flickering in and out of existence. He's not moving, not attacking, just present, watching. A witness to the murders. A manifestation of the tragedy. And in one frame, if you pause at exactly the right moment, you can see what looks like a purple figure. The purple guy, William Afton, the murderer. FNAF 2 also gave us crucial information through Phone Guy's messages. He mentions the Springlock suits, explaining they are being retired due to multiple failures. He tells you that if you get a Springlock suit in your office, don't panic. Just get through the night and report it in the morning. This explains why withered Golden Freddy appears so destroyed. He's a Springlock suit that's been decommissioned, left to rot in a back room, no longer used, no longer maintained. But he's still active, still possessed, still hunting. The placement of FNAF 2 in 1987 also creates timeline questions that the community still debates. If the missing children incident occurred before FNAF 2, then the children already possess the animatronics during this game. But some evidence suggests the murders might occur during FNAF 2, with the Save Them minigame showing the moment of the crime. The exact timeline of when the children died versus when the games take place is one of FNAF's most contested debates, and Golden Freddy sits at the center of it. What we can confirm is that, by FNAF 2, Golden Freddy is already behaving differently from the others. Already appearing and disappearing, already manifesting in impossible ways, already connected to the deepest tragedies. Then, FNAF 3 changed the entire direction of the lore. FNAF 3 is set 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed. A horror attraction called Fazbear's Fright has been created, attempting to capitalize on the urban legends surrounding the restaurant chain. The creators have found actual relics from the old locations: arcade machines, posters, props, and one animatronic, Springtrap. A horrifically decayed Spring Bonnie suit with a corpse visible inside. William Afton's corpse, we eventually learn. He was cornered by the spirits of the children he murdered, and in desperation, he climbed into the Spring Bonnie suit to hide from them. But the suit was old. The Springlocks were fragile, and when they failed, William Afton was killed in the same type of suit he had used to lure children to their deaths. Poetic justice. Except William didn't die. Not really. His spirit remained, trapped in the suit, bound to it the same way the children's spirits are bound to their animatronics. And 30 years later, he's still there, still aware, still hunting. Golden Freddy doesn't physically appear in FNAF 3. The main gameplay involves surviving against Springtrap and various hallucinations of the old animatronics, but Golden Freddy isn't among them. This is significant because it suggests Golden Freddy's role has shifted. He's no longer hunting the night guard. He's involved in something else. The minigames reveal what? Hidden throughout FNAF 3 are minigames that tell the story of the spirits finding freedom. In one, you follow Shadow Freddy, a mysterious purple-tinted Freddy, through a pizzeria. Shadow Freddy leads the animatronics, one by one, to a back room where Purple Guy is waiting. The animatronics approach, and Purple Guy dismantles them, destroying their physical bodies. But when the animatronics are destroyed, the spirits are freed from their suits, and they're angry. They corner William. He backs into the room where the old Springlock suits are stored and climbs into Spring Bonnie. He laughs, thinking he's safe. Then water drips from the ceiling. The Springlocks release. William screams, and the spirits watch as he dies. But the most important minigame is Happiest Day. To access it, you must complete a series of other minigames, each one requiring you to find hidden items and deliver them to specific locations. Balloons, cake, cupcakes. Each item you deliver unlocks a child's memory, represented by the masks they wear. When all the items are delivered, Happiest Day becomes accessible. You enter a room decorated for a birthday party. A child sits at a table wearing a Golden Freddy mask. Other children enter, each wearing a mask representing the animatronics. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. They gather around the table. A puppet child appears and places a cake in front of the Golden Freddy child. The Golden Freddy child stares at the cake. Then they reach up and remove their mask. The other children follow. All the masks fall away, and the scene fades, leaving only the masks lying empty on the ground. The implication is clear. This is the moment the spirits have been waiting for, the release they needed, the birthday party that was stolen from them when they were murdered. And by giving them this moment, by completing Happiest Day, you've freed them. They can finally rest. Golden Freddy is central to this. The party is for them. The Golden Freddy child is the one receiving the cake, the one at the center of the celebration. This suggests that freeing Golden Freddy is the key to freeing all the spirits. That Golden Freddy is somehow the most important, the one who needed this moment more than the others. But there's a complication. A question the minigame doesn't answer. Did this actually happen? Is Happiest Day depicting an event that occurred in the FNAF timeline, or is it showing a possibility? A good ending that might not be canon, because Golden Freddy continues to appear after FNAF 3. FNAF 4 doesn't feature Golden Freddy directly in the main gameplay. The nightmares you face are twisted versions of the animatronics, but there's no Nightmare Golden Freddy in the base game. However, if you complete Night 6, a new challenge unlocks. Night 7. And hidden within Night 7 is a secret. By changing the time on your computer to specific dates, you can trigger the appearance of Nightmare Fredbear. He's a nightmarish version of Fredbear with massive claws, multiple rows of teeth, and a design that seems intended to represent pure childhood terror. He's not Golden Freddy exactly, but he's the Fredbear that killed the crying child, now transformed into the most horrific version imaginable. Defeat Nightmare Fredbear, and an even worse version appears. Nightmare. A completely black animatronic with yellow eyes and teeth, essentially Nightmare Fredbear stripped of all color, all features, reduced to a living shadow. Nightmare represents the ultimate fear, the thing that haunts your dreams even when the specific details are stripped away. These aren't Golden Freddy, but they're connected to him through Fredbear. They represent the trauma associated with that character, the fear, the death, the guilt. And if the FNAF 4 nightmares are indeed Michael Afton's guilt-driven hallucinations, then Nightmare Fredbear represents his deepest shame. The moment he killed his brother. But the minigames in FNAF 4 are what truly matter for Golden Freddy's lore. We see the crying child's final days. We see the bite of 83. We see the hospital. We see the Fredbear plush promising to put him back together. And we see something else. Throughout the minigames, certain items and locations are marked with flowers, purple flowers. These same flowers appear in one of the FNAF 3 minigames, connecting the crying child's story to the hidden path leading to Happiest Day. The implication is that the crying child is somehow involved in the Happiest Day sequence. That freeing Golden Freddy means freeing the crying child. But if the crying child died in 1983 and the missing children incident occurred later, how can the crying child be connected to Golden Freddy, who is possessed by the fifth missing child, unless they are both there, both possessing the same animatronic? The crying child from the bite of 83 and Cassidy from the missing children incident. Two souls, two tragedies, one vessel. This is where Golden Duo becomes not just a theory, but the most logical explanation for everything we've seen. Golden Freddy behaves differently because he is different. He has two souls, two levels of awareness, two motivations, and this explains the contradiction between Happiest Day and what comes next. Sister Location barely features Golden Freddy at all. The game focuses on the underground facility where William Afton created the Funtime animatronics, robots designed to capture and kill children. The horror is different here, more visceral, more focused on body horror and the revelation that the animatronics contain remnant harvested from destroyed spirits. But there's a secret room. A private room accessible only by completing the game on a specific difficulty. In this room, monitors show various cameras, and on one screen, very briefly, you can see a Golden Bear suit. A Fredbear suit. It's not active, not possessed, just a suit hanging in storage, but its presence is a reminder. Fredbear was always there, in the background, in the history. The original character that started everything. Then came Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and Golden Freddy's story took its darkest turn. Pizzeria Simulator presents itself as a business management game where you build and run a Freddy Fazbear's pizza. But hidden beneath the surface is a darker purpose. You're being guided by someone and you're gathering animatronics into your pizzeria. Not to entertain, to trap. The game reveals that Henry Emily, William's original partner, has orchestrated this entire scenario. He's built a pizzeria designed to burn, to destroy, and he's luring in the remaining animatronics, the ones still possessed by spirits, to end this nightmare once and for all. In the completion ending, Henry addresses the spirits directly. He tells them he's sorry. Sorry they were lured away from safety. Sorry they've been trapped for so long. And he tells them it's time to rest. The building is set to burn, and this time the fire will consume everything. The animatronics, the spirits, the remnant. All of it will be destroyed, ensuring the souls can finally be freed. But then Henry addresses someone specific. He doesn't say a name, but the community knows who he's talking to. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be." He's talking to Michael Afton, who has been working to undo his father's crimes, who has become a corpse himself after the events of Sister Location, who wants to burn with the others because he can't live with what he's done and what he's become. But more importantly, Henry addresses one spirit in particular, one who he suspects won't want to rest. "I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you?" He's talking to the puppet, to Charlie, his own daughter who was murdered by William and became the puppet. But the way he speaks suggests there's someone else, someone who might not accept this release, someone who might resist, and then he speaks directly to William. "And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although, for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. The building burns. Everything burns. The spirits are freed. Michael dies. William is dragged to hell. Except one spirit doesn't rest." The vengeful spirit ending shows a scene unlike anything else in FNAF. We see Golden Freddy twitching, glitching, and we hear a young girl's voice. "He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not going to let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us." This is Cassidy, the fifth missing child, the vengeful spirit, and she's refusing to let William go. Even as the others find peace, even as the fire destroys everything, Cassidy holds on. She traps William's soul, preventing him from moving to whatever afterlife awaits, instead dragging him into a personal hell of her own creation. And that hell is Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night released as what seemed like a celebration. 50 animatronics. Endless customization. The ultimate challenge for hardcore FNAF players. But hidden within the game are voice lines and details that tell a story. You're someone being tormented. Someone who deserves this. Someone who the animatronics recognize as the one who killed them. And you can't escape. No matter how many times you survive until 6 a.m., you just start over. Again and again. Forever. Old Man Consequences, a mysterious character who appears in secret minigames, speaks to Golden Freddy. "Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else." He's telling Cassidy to let go, to stop tormenting William, to rest. But Cassidy refuses. She's keeping William in this hell, making him experience terror forever as punishment for murdering her and the others. And this is where the two-soul theory becomes critical. Because if Golden Freddy contains both the crying child and Cassidy, then in Ultimate Custom Night we're seeing them split. The crying child has moved on, found peace in happiest day. But Cassidy remains fueled by vengeance, unable to forgive, unable to rest while William still exists. The voice lines from various animatronics support this. Withered Chica's "I have seen him," the one you shouldn't have killed. Mangle's "He's here and always watching," the one you shouldn't have killed. They are all referring to someone specific, someone whose death matters more than the others. Some interpret this as Cassidy, the spirit William shouldn't have killed because she refuses to let him go. Others interpret it as the crying child, William's own son, the death that matters most because it's personal, because it's the one that drove William to everything that followed. But there's another voice line, one from Nightmare Fredbear. "Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again." It's a corruption of the Fredbear plush's promise. "I will put you back together." But in Ultimate Custom Night, it's twisted into a threat. A cycle of construction and destruction. And if William is being tormented in part by guilt over his own son's death, then Nightmare Fredbear represents that guilt. The knowledge that he couldn't save his child and everything he did afterward was a failure. So Ultimate Custom Night becomes more than just Cassidy's revenge. It becomes a hell crafted from all of William's sins. The children he murdered, the son he lost, the partner he betrayed, all of it converging into eternal punishment, and Golden Freddy is the warden. But even here, there's ambiguity. Some have theorized that Ultimate Custom Night isn't William's hell, but Michael's. That Michael, who burned in Pizzeria Simulator, is being tormented by the spirits who don't realize he was trying to help them. That Golden Freddy is punishing the wrong person. The evidence against this is substantial. The animatronics' voice lines reference the killer, the one who murdered them. Michael didn't kill them. William did. And the entire thematic structure of Ultimate Custom Night, with its demonic imagery and hell framing, makes sense only if the person being punished is William. But the fact that the debate exists shows how carefully Scott has maintained ambiguity around Golden Freddy. Even when we think we understand, even when the evidence points in one direction, there's always another interpretation, another possibility, and then the franchise moved forward. Help wanted, special delivery, security breach. Games set in a new era, decades after the original tragedies, where Fazbear Entertainment has become a corporate entity trying to cover up its past by claiming everything was just rumors and stories. Golden Freddy appears in Help Wanted, but as a memory. A recreation within the virtual reality experience created to discredit the old stories. He's not real anymore, not active, just a digital ghost of a physical ghost. But in one minigame, hidden deep in the files, you can find Glitchtrap, a digital manifestation of William Afton's consciousness that survived by being scanned from old circuit boards. And in that same game, there are references to the old tragedies, the missing children, the haunting. And Golden Freddy is there in the code, still watching. Security breach takes place in a massive entertainment complex built on the ruins of the old Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations. You play as Gregory, a child trapped overnight in the pizzaplex, hunted by corrupted animatronics. The game introduces Vanny, a follower of Glitchtrap, and suggests that William Afton's influence persists even in this modern era. But beneath the pizzaplex, in the ruins of the old pizzeria, you can find remnants of the past. Moldy animatronic parts, old posters. And in one area, a room that looks suspiciously like the FNAF 3 location where William died. Golden Freddy doesn't appear directly in Security Breach's main game, but his absence is conspicuous. After being so central to the lore, after being the spirit that trapped William in hell, where is he now? If William's consciousness has returned as Glitchtrap, what happened to Cassidy? What happened to the crying child? The Princess Quest ending provides a possible answer. In this ending, Vanessa, the woman possessed by Glitchtrap, is freed when Gregory completes a series of arcade games involving a princess rescuing another character. The final image shows two figures leaving the pizzaplex together, free. Some theorize this represents Cassidy finally finding peace. That the princess represents her, fighting through one final challenge to free herself from the cycle of vengeance. That after keeping William trapped for so long, she's finally let go and moved on. But it's not confirmed. It's interpretation. And that's exactly how Scott wants it. Because Golden Freddy has never been about clear answers. Golden Freddy is about mystery, about the questions that remain when everything else is explained, about the spirit that refuses to follow the same rules as everyone else, and that's what makes him unforgettable. To truly understand Golden Freddy, we need to examine every theory that has emerged over the years, not just the popular ones, but the intricate, evidence-based interpretations that have shaped how the community understands this character. Because Golden Freddy exists at the intersection of FNAF's most debated questions, and each theory reveals something important about the nature of this mystery. Let's start with the identity question. Who possesses Golden Freddy? The Golden Cassidy theory is the most straightforward. It proposes that Cassidy, the fifth missing child, is the sole spirit possessing Golden Freddy. The evidence is substantial. The survival logbook reveals Cassidy's name through a complex puzzle involving faded text and altered letters. The spirit speaking through altered text is associated with Golden Freddy through various contextual clues in the book. Ultimate Custom Night positions Golden Freddy as the vengeful spirit tormenting William Afton, and the young girl's voice in the Vengeful Spirit cutscene confirms a female spirit is involved. In the Fazbear Fright story, The Man in Room 1280, a boy named Andrew keeps William Afton alive through sheer vengeful will, refusing to let him die despite his body being horrifically burned. Andrew is described as having curly black hair and is explicitly identified as the one you shouldn't have killed. The story parallels Ultimate Custom Night's narrative so closely that many consider Andrew to be the book universe's version of Cassidy. If we accept Golden Cassidy as the complete answer, then Golden Freddy's story becomes relatively simple. Cassidy was murdered by William Afton during the missing children incident. Her body was hidden in a decommissioned Fredbear suit. Her spirit possessed that suit, becoming Golden Freddy. She appeared throughout the games as one of the 5 main spirits seeking revenge. During Pizzeria Simulator, when Henry offered the spirit's piece, the other 4 accepted, but Cassidy refused. She dragged William to hell in Ultimate Custom Night and kept him there, tormented by her refusal to forgive. This interpretation is clean, narratively satisfying, and supported by significant evidence, but it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the crying child's role. It doesn't explain why Golden Freddy behaves so differently from the other animatronics. It doesn't explain the dual manifestations in FNAF 2, the slumped suit and the floating head appearing separately. It doesn't explain the connection between the crying child's story in FNAF 4 and the Happiest Day minigame, where Golden Freddy is central to freeing all the spirits. And it doesn't explain the survival logbook's other spirit, because the logbook contains 2 spirits communicating. The altered text spirit associated with Cassidy and the faded text spirit associated with the crying child. They're talking to each other. The faded text asks questions. What do you see? What is your name? The altered text responds by manipulating existing text in the book. If both spirits are communicating through the same book, and the book is filled with imagery connecting to both FNAF 1 and FNAF 4, then both spirits must have some connection to the same place, the same context, possibly the same animatronic. This is the foundation of Golden Duo, also called Golden Both. The theory that Golden Freddy contains 2 souls, the crying child and Cassidy, 2 separate tragedies, 2 separate deaths, but both bound to the same vessel. The evidence supporting this is complex and multifaceted. First, there's the timeline. The crying child died in 1983 from the bite involving Fredbear. The missing children incident occurred sometime later, with Cassidy being murdered and her body hidden in a Golden Freddy suit. If the crying child's spirit was already attached to Fredbear from his death, then when Cassidy's body was placed in a similar suit, her spirit would be joining an already occupied vessel. Second, there's the behavior. Golden Freddy appears in multiple forms simultaneously. In FNAF 2, you can encounter the slumped, withered Golden Freddy in your office while also seeing the floating Golden Freddy head in the hallway. These are different manifestations occurring at the same time, suggesting multiple consciousnesses projecting different aspects of the same entity. Third, there's the symbolism. The crying child is associated with sadness, fear, confusion. He's a victim of an accident, a child who died before understanding what happened to him. Cassidy is associated with anger, vengeance, determination. She's a murder victim who knows exactly who killed her and refuses to let him escape justice. These are complementary but distinct emotional states, and Golden Freddy exhibits both throughout the series. In FNAF 1 and 2, Golden Freddy appears sad, slumped, defeated. The way he sits suggests exhaustion, not aggression. But in Ultimate Custom Night, Golden Freddy is explicitly vengeful, active, intentional. The shift suggests different aspects of the same entity coming to the forefront at different times. Fourth, there's the Happiest Day connection. The minigame shows a child in a Golden Freddy mask receiving a birthday party, surrounded by the other murdered children. But the imagery and the path to unlock Happiest Day are filled with references to FNAF 4, to the crying child's story, to the purple flowers that mark significant locations in both games. If Happiest Day is meant to free the spirits, and Golden Freddy is central to that freedom, but Golden Freddy also appears as the vengeful spirit in Pizzeria Simulator, refusing to rest, then the most logical explanation is that Happiest Day freed one soul while the other remained. The crying child found peace. Cassidy did not. This resolves the apparent contradiction. It explains why Golden Freddy could be freed in FNAF 3 but still active in Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night. It wasn't the entire entity that was freed, just one part of it. Fifth, there's the It's Me connection. Throughout FNAF 1, hallucinations appear with the phrase, "It's me." These hallucinations are most commonly associated with Golden Freddy. The phrase appears when Golden Freddy is near, when his poster flickers, when his presence is felt. "It's me" could be the crying child trying to communicate with William Afton, his brother, the one who caused his death. If Michael is the night guard in FNAF 1, working at Freddy's out of guilt and a desire to fix what his father and he himself destroyed, then "It's me" is the crying child saying, "I'm here. I'm the one in Golden Freddy. It's me, your brother." This interpretation is supported by the fact that "It's me" appears in contexts that don't make sense for the other spirits. Why would the murdered children be trying to identify themselves to a random night guard? But if one of the spirits in Golden Freddy is Michael's brother, then "It's me" becomes deeply personal, a recognition, a haunting that's familial, not just vengeful. Sixth, there's the voice line evidence from Ultimate Custom Night. Withered Chica says, "I have seen him." The one you shouldn't have killed. The pronoun is masculine. Him, not her. If Cassidy is female, as the vengeful spirit cutscene suggests, then who is the him that shouldn't have been killed? The crying child. William's son. The child whose death started everything, whose loss drove William to his experiments with remnant and possession, whose tragedy set in motion the entire nightmare of 5 Nights at Freddy's. William shouldn't have let his son die. Or, depending on interpretation, William shouldn't have caused his son's death. if William was somehow responsible for putting the crying child in the situation that led to the bite. The guilt over this loss, combined with the vengeful fury of Cassidy, creates the perfect hell for William Afton. But Golden Duo, despite its evidence, has problems. The biggest issue is clarity. Scott Cawthon has never explicitly confirmed that Golden Freddy contains two souls. The Fazbear Fright stories, which many consider to be thematic parallels revealing answers to game mysteries, consistently show Golden Freddy parallels with a single spirit. Andrew in The Man in Room 1280. Jake in The Real Jake, who shares his body with another consciousness, but in a way that's explicitly different from possession. If Scott wanted to confirm two souls in Golden Freddy, he could have created a Fazbear Fright story showing exactly that scenario. Instead, the stories show single spirits with immense power, able to do impossible things through sheer will and remnant-based supernatural physics. Additionally, the crying child's fate remains one of FNAF's biggest unsolved mysteries. If he becomes part of Golden Freddy, that's a significant revelation that deserves explicit confirmation. The fact that it remains ambiguous after all these years suggests either Scott is saving the reveal for a future game, or the crying child's fate is something else entirely. This brings us to the competing theories about the crying child's identity. Mike Bro versus Mike Victim is the first major divide. Mike Bro proposes that Michael Afton, the character we play as in Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, is the older brother who caused the bite of 83. He's working to undo his father's crimes out of guilt for what happened to his younger brother, and horror at what his father became. This interpretation is supported by the FNAF 4 gameplay possibly being Michael's nightmares, the survival logbook showing FNAF 4 house imagery in a book used by Mike, and the thematic weight of Michael seeking redemption for his past. Mike Victim, largely abandoned by the community but worth mentioning for completeness, proposed that Michael Afton is the crying child, somehow revived or reconstructed after the bite of 83. This was based on the "I will put you back together" promise, and the idea that William experimented with Remnant to save his son. But Sister Location's revelation that Michael is an adult who speaks and has memories contradicting the crying child's experiences essentially debunked this theory. If we accept Mike Bro as correct, and Michael is the older brother, then the crying child's identity remains separate. He's not Michael. He's not any known character we play as. He's simply the younger brother, and his fate after death is the question. Golden Victim proposes he becomes Golden Freddy, either alone or alongside Cassidy. We've explored this extensively. Shadow Victim proposes he becomes Shadow Freddy, the mysterious purple-tinted Freddy that appears in FNAF 2 and leads the animatronics to their destruction in FNAF 3. Shadow Freddy's behavior is different from Golden Freddy, more active, more intentional but still supernatural. He doesn't attack you directly. He appears and disappears. He seems to have his own agenda. The evidence for Shadow Victim includes Shadow Freddy's color, a dark purple similar to the crying child's association with purple throughout FNAF 4. Shadow Freddy appears in FNAF 3 leading the animatronics to William, facilitating their revenge, which could be the crying child helping the other spirits get justice. And Shadow Freddy's more passive nature fits the crying child's personality better than Golden Freddy's aggressive manifestations. But Shadow Victim has problems. Shadow Freddy is often interpreted as a manifestation of William Afton himself, a dark reflection of the Yellow Freddy design, representing William's corruption of what should have been innocent entertainment. The FNAF 3 minigames show Shadow Freddy leading the animatronics to their dismantling, which could be William luring them to destroy them, not a spirit helping them find revenge. Additionally, Shadow Bonnie appears alongside Shadow Freddy in FNAF 2, suggesting the shadows might be a matched pair related to the Springlock suits rather than individual spirits. Their nature remains deeply mysterious, and assigning the crying child to Shadow Freddy creates as many questions as it answers. Nobody Victim is the theory that the crying child doesn't possess any animatronic. He simply dies and moves on, or becomes something else entirely. The "I will put you back together" promise might not be literal. It might be emotional, spiritual, a promise that his soul will be preserved, that he won't be forgotten, that he'll find peace despite the trauma. This theory is supported by the absence of clear evidence showing where the crying child went. If he was in Golden Freddy, we'd expect more direct confirmation. If he was in Shadow Freddy, same issue. The lack of clarity might simply mean he's not in any animatronic at all. But Nobody Victim feels narratively unsatisfying. The crying child is too important to the story. His death is too significant. The Fredbear plush's promise is too specific. For him to simply disappear from the narrative seems unlikely given Scott's careful construction of interconnected mysteries. Then there's the radical theory, the one that changes everything we think we understand about possession and souls in FNAF, Shadow Victim, also called part of the broader Stitchline debate. The Fazbear Fright story, The Real Jake, introduces a concept where a dying child's consciousness is split across multiple objects through the use of remnant and emotional attachment. Jake, the child in the story, is distributed across several items he loved, his soul fragmented and scattered. Shadow Victim proposes that the crying child's soul was shattered in a similar way, that instead of possessing a single animatronic, pieces of him exist in multiple places. Maybe a piece is in Golden Freddy. Maybe a piece is in Shadow Freddy. Maybe pieces are scattered throughout the FNAF universe in ways we haven't fully understood. This would explain the "I will put you back together" promise, not as bringing him back to life, but as gathering the scattered pieces of his soul to reconstruct his consciousness. And it would explain why we can't definitively place him in any single location, because he's not in a single location. He's everywhere and nowhere. The evidence for Shadow Victim is largely based on Fazbear Fright's parallels and the thematic resonance with FNAF 4 imagery. The crying child is shown shattered throughout the minigames, broken. His toys are scattered. His life is fragmented by fear and trauma. When he dies, that fragmentation could become literal. But Shadow Victim requires accepting that Fazbear Fright stories are more than thematic parallels. It requires accepting them as revealing actual mechanics of how souls work in the game universe. And this is where the Stitchline debate comes in. Stitchline is the theory that the Fazbear Fright stories are in continuity with the games, that they're showing events that actually happened in the game timeline, filling in gaps and revealing answers. The alternative is that Fazbear Fright stories are separate canon, using similar rules and themes but not depicting literal game events. Scott Cawthon has said the stories are meant to fill in blanks of the past and help solve mysteries, but he's also said they're not meant to be perfectly aligned with game canon. This ambiguity has created endless debate about which story elements can be applied to game theories and which cannot. For Golden Freddy specifically, the Stitchline debate matters because of Andrew. Andrew, from The Man in Room 1280 and subsequent stories, is explicitly a vengeful spirit who keeps William alive through supernatural power, who refuses to let him die, who creates a nightmare world to torment him. The parallels to Ultimate Custom Night are undeniable. Andrew is described with curly black hair, is identified as the one you shouldn't have killed, and his entire arc mirrors what we see happening with Golden Freddy and William in the games. If Andrew is a direct parallel to Cassidy, then his story reveals how Cassidy's vengeance works. She's using remnant and agony to keep William's soul trapped, creating a hell dimension that exists outside normal reality, forcing him to experience endless torment. But Andrew is male, and the vengeful spirit voice in Pizzeria Simulator is female. This gender discrepancy has caused intense debate. Some argue Andrew and Cassidy are different characters, with Andrew being a book-only spirit and Cassidy being game-only. Others argue Andrew is the book version of Cassidy, with the gender changed for the book adaptation. Others argue both Andrew and Cassidy exist in the games, with Andrew being the crying child and both spirits working together to trap William. This last interpretation would support Golden Duo while incorporating Stitchline evidence, but it requires accepting a lot of assumptions. The truth is, we don't have a definitive answer. Scott has kept this deliberately ambiguous, likely because the ambiguity serves the story. Golden Freddy is more terrifying, more mysterious, more compelling when we can't quite pin down exactly who or what he is, but we can construct a most likely scenario based on the strongest evidence. The crying child died in the bite of 83, and his soul became attached to Fredbear in some way, either possessing the suit directly or becoming fragmented across multiple locations with part of him in the Fredbear suit. Cassidy was murdered during the missing children incident, and her body was hidden in a decommissioned Fredbear suit, a different suit than the original but similar in design. Her spirit possessed this suit, becoming Golden Freddy. If the suits are different, then Golden Freddy and the Fredbear that killed the crying child are separate physical objects, which resolves some timeline issues. But spiritually, they're connected. The crying child's trauma and death are linked to Fredbear as a character, as a symbol. When Cassidy possesses a Fredbear suit, that connection creates a bridge. The two spirits become aware of each other. They share the vessel, or they share a connection across vessels. The crying child's confusion and sadness mix with Cassidy's rage and determination. This creates Golden Freddy's unique properties, the dual manifestations, the supernatural abilities, the different behavior patterns. Throughout FNAF 1 and 2, both spirits are present, creating the strange phenomena we witness. It's me is the crying child trying to reach Michael. The aggressive manifestations are Cassidy seeking revenge on anyone associated with Freddy's. In FNAF 3, Happiest Day offers freedom. The crying child accepts it. He's given the birthday party he never had, the moment of peace that releases him from his trauma. He moves on, but Cassidy refuses. When Henry burns everything in Pizzeria Simulator, the other spirits accept release. The crying child is already gone, freed in Happiest Day, but Cassidy holds on, dragging William into Ultimate Custom Night. The one you shouldn't have killed refers to the crying child, William's son, whose death is what makes William's punishment complete. But Cassidy is the one enforcing that punishment, the spirit with the power and will to create and maintain hell. Eventually, perhaps in Princess Quest, perhaps in an ending we haven't seen yet, Cassidy lets go. She finds peace. Golden Freddy finally, truly, completely rests. This interpretation accounts for the most evidence while remaining consistent with confirmed facts, but it's still interpretation. Still theory, and that's appropriate, because Golden Freddy has always been the character that resists complete explanation, the mystery that remains mysterious, but there's more to explore, the mechanics, the secrets, the hidden details that reveal not just who Golden Freddy is, but how Golden Freddy works within the rules of this universe. Because FNAF has rules, strange rules, supernatural rules, but rules nonetheless, and Golden Freddy breaks them in specific, important ways. Understanding those breaks means understanding possession itself, how souls attach to animatronics in the FNAF universe, why some spirits can move on and others can't, what remnant is and how it binds consciousness to metal, why Golden Freddy can appear without the physical suit being present, why he can manifest as a floating head, as a slumped corpse, as a hallucination, as a physical threat. The mechanics of Golden Freddy are the mechanics of FNAF's entire supernatural system taken to their extreme, and examining them reveals truths about the entire franchise. Let's start with possession basics. In FNAF, when a person dies in close proximity to an animatronic, particularly if their body is hidden inside the animatronic, their soul can become attached to it. This isn't automatic. It requires specific conditions, trauma, emotional attachment. Remnant, which is molten metal that has somehow absorbed spiritual energy and can bind souls to physical objects. The original 5 children were murdered and stuffed into suits. Their bodies decomposed inside the animatronics, but their souls remained, bound by the combination of trauma, the proximity of their remains, and possibly remnant that William used or that naturally formed from the metal of the suits mixing with the spiritual energy of death. These spirits gain a degree of control over the animatronics. They can move them, see through their eyes, use them to interact with the physical world, but they're limited by the mechanics of the suits. They can only go where the animatronic can physically move. They can only interact through the animatronic's built-in capabilities. Except Golden Freddy doesn't follow these rules. Golden Freddy appears without moving. He manifests in your office in FNAF 1 without traveling through any hallway, without appearing on any camera. The suit simply materializes, going from non-existent to present instantaneously. This shouldn't be possible if Golden Freddy is just a possessed animatronic like the others. But it is possible if Golden Freddy is something more. If the spirit possessing him has achieved a level of supernatural power that transcends physical limitations, how would a spirit gain that kind of power? Agony. Fazbear Frights introduces agony as a concept. It's emotional energy, specifically the energy of intense suffering, that can imprint on objects and locations. Agony can create hallucinations. It can animate objects that shouldn't move. It can warp reality in localized ways. If the crying child died in intense agony, traumatized and terrified, his death involving Fredbear would imprint enormous agony onto anything associated with that character. If Cassidy died in rage and terror, murdered and stuffed into a suit, her agony would add to it. 2 sources of intense agony focused on the same character design would create something unprecedented. A spirit or spirits with power far beyond normal possession, the ability to manifest without physical presence, to appear in multiple forms, to affect perception and reality. This explains Golden Freddy's teleportation. He's not actually moving through space. He's manifesting where perception allows him to appear. Your office is a place of fear and anticipation. You're watching cameras, expecting threats. Golden Freddy uses that fear to materialize in your awareness, and because his agony-based power is so intense, that manifestation becomes real enough to kill you. It also explains why raising the monitor dismisses him in FNAF 1. You're breaking the perception, refusing to acknowledge the manifestation. And because Golden Freddy's presence is based on perception and fear rather than physical presence, breaking that acknowledgement causes him to disappear. The other animatronics can't be dismissed this way because they're physically present. They've actually moved through the building and are standing in your office. But Golden Freddy is simultaneously real and not real, physical and hallucination. A ghost in the truest sense. This ties into remnant mechanics revealed in the novels and Fazbear frights. Remnant is memory and emotion made physical. It's created when metal is present during moments of extreme emotion, particularly death. The metal absorbs the emotional energy, becoming remnant, which can then be used to preserve consciousness, create possession, or power supernatural phenomena. William Afton discovered remnant through his experiments. He harvested it from destroyed animatronics. He injected it into new creations. He used it to try to achieve immortality. And in doing so, he created the tools for the spirits to become more powerful than he intended. If the Fredbear suit that killed the crying child was melted down or destroyed, the remnant from it would carry the crying child's agony. If that remnant was then present when Cassidy was killed, or if her body was placed in a suit made with metal containing remnant, the two sources would combine. This could explain how two spirits end up in Golden Freddy even if they died in different suits at different times. The remnant connects them. The agony binds them. They become part of the same supernatural entity, even though they are separate consciousnesses. And this massive concentration of remnant and agony gives Golden Freddy abilities the others don't have. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie might be similar phenomena. They appear without explanation, manifest in impossible ways, and seem to be connected to the Springlock suits. Some theories propose they are remnant echoes, impressions left behind by suffering associated with Springlock failures. Not full spirits, but fragments, shadows cast by agony. If this is accurate, then FNAF's supernatural system operates on a spectrum. At one end, you have simple haunting, a spirit in an animatronic, able to control it but bound by its physical limitations. In the middle, you have enhanced haunting, spirits with enough agony and remnant to do impossible things but still tethered to physical forms. At the far end, you have pure manifestation, spirits so powerful they don't need physical forms anymore, existing as concentrated agony that can shape reality through will alone. Golden Freddy exists at that far end. Or at least, Cassidy does by the time of Ultimate Custom Night. In Ultimate Custom Night, Golden Freddy doesn't need a suit anymore. He's pure vengeance, pure power. He's created an entire dimension of torment using nothing but will and remnant-based supernatural energy. William Afton is trapped in a space that exists outside normal reality, experiencing endless variations of his worst fears, unable to escape, unable to die. This is what a spirit can become when they refuse to let go. When agony and remnant and sheer determination combine into something that transcends normal death, and it's horrifying, not because of jump scares, not because of graphic violence, but because it represents suffering made eternal, hatred given form and power. The complete corruption of what should have been innocent, a child's spirit, into something monstrous. This is the true horror of Golden Freddy, Not what he does, but what he represents. The consequence of tragedy compounded by more tragedy, of pain that never heals, of justice that becomes vengeance that becomes cruelty. The other spirits found peace. They were freed. They moved on to whatever afterlife awaits in the FNAF universe. But Golden Freddy, or at least the part of Golden Freddy that is Cassidy, chose differently. And that choice has made her into something that barely resembles a child anymore. She's become a nightmare, a demon. The very thing she's punishing William for creating. It's tragic. It's understandable. And it's deeply, profoundly dark. This is why Golden Freddy matters, not just as a gameplay element, not just as a mystery to solve, but as a character whose story explores what happens when pain becomes identity, when vengeance becomes purpose, when the desire for justice transforms into something that can never be satisfied. And the question that remains is whether Cassidy ever finds peace, whether she ever lets go, whether the cycle ever ends. Because if she doesn't, if she remains trapped in her own hatred forever, then William wins in a way. He doesn't escape punishment, but he's turned his victim into a monster. He's corrupted her soul as thoroughly as he corrupted everything else he touched. That's the real tragedy of Golden Freddy. Not the death, not the haunting, but the potential for eternal suffering on both sides. Victim and victimizer locked together forever in mutual torment, unless someone breaks the cycle. The question of whether the cycle breaks, whether Cassidy finds peace, leads us into the modern era of FNAF and the evidence hidden in the most recent games. Because, while Golden Freddy's most prominent appearances were in the early games, his influence continues to ripple through everything that follows. And understanding these later appearances reveals whether his story has an ending, or whether it remains perpetually unresolved. Help Wanted changed the nature of FNAF's universe in a fundamental way. Released in 2019, Help Wanted is a virtual reality game where you play through recreations of scenarios from previous FNAF games. The framing narrative explains that Fazbear Entertainment has hired a game development company to create these VR experiences, specifically to discredit the rumors about haunted animatronics and murdered children. By turning the tragedies into games, they're attempting to rewrite history, making people believe that the horror stories were always just fiction. It's meta in a way that Scott Cawthon had never attempted before. The game acknowledges that FNAF games exist within the FNAF universe. And it introduces a terrifying new element, Glitch Trap. Hidden within the VR game's code is a digital entity, a virus that appears as a man in a golden rabbit suit, dancing and waving, seemingly harmless until you realize he's trying to possess you. The player character, a beta tester for the VR game, slowly comes under Glitchtrap's influence, and by the game's end, it's implied that Glitchtrap has successfully taken control. The reveal is chilling. Glitchtrap is William Afton. Or more precisely, Glitchtrap is William Afton's consciousness, scanned from old circuit boards recovered from the original animatronics, digitized and integrated into the VR game's code. He survived, not as Springtrap, not as a physical entity, but as data. As malicious code that can spread, infect, and possess anyone who interacts with the game. This creates an enormous problem for Golden Freddy's story. If William escaped Ultimate Custom Night by being digitized, then Cassidy failed. Her eternal punishment didn't hold. William found a way out, ascending into a form that Cassidy can't touch because she's bound to the physical and spiritual world while he's become digital. Except that might not be the complete picture. The timeline of when William became Glitchtrap is unclear. Some evidence suggests the circuit boards were scanned before Pizzeria Simulator, meaning William's consciousness was copied into digital form, while his physical body was still active. When his body died and Cassidy dragged his soul into Ultimate Custom Night, she got the original William, the spiritual William, but a copy had already escaped into cyberspace. This would mean Ultimate Custom Night is still happening. William's soul is still trapped, still being tormented by Cassidy, but a fragment of him, a digital copy, is free and active in the modern era. If this interpretation is correct, then Cassidy hasn't failed. She's keeping the real William trapped. But the copy is beyond her reach, requiring someone else to stop him. And that's where Vanessa and the Princess Quest ending come in. Security Breach presents multiple endings, but the Princess Quest ending is the most narratively significant for Golden Freddy's story. Throughout the game, you can find arcade machines running a game called Princess Quest, a retro-style adventure where a princess fights through a dark castle, battling enemies and searching for something. Complete all 3 Princess Quest games, and you unlock the true ending. The princess reaches the top of the castle and confronts a final enemy. She defeats it, and in doing so, something changes. The implication is that Vanessa, who has been possessed by Glitchtrap throughout Security Breach, is freed. The princess represents her consciousness, fighting through the digital corruption to reclaim herself. But there's another layer. Some theorists propose that the princess isn't Vanessa, it's Cassidy. The evidence is subtle but present. The princess in the game has long black hair, similar to how Cassidy is depicted in some interpretations. The castle she's fighting through could represent the digital prison of Glitchtrap's influence, but it could also represent Ultimate Custom Night itself, the hell dimension Cassidy created. If Cassidy is the princess, then Princess Quest shows her fighting one final battle, not to keep William trapped but to finally destroy him completely. She enters the digital realm, confronts the copy of William that escaped her grasp and defeats him, and in doing so, she completes her revenge. William is destroyed in every form, physical, spiritual, and digital. With her vengeance complete, Cassidy can finally rest. The 3 stars that appear after completing Princess Quest could represent the 3 spirits who had the hardest time letting go. The puppet Charlie, who stayed behind to protect the other children, Cassidy, who refused to forgive William, and possibly the crying child if any fragment of him remained after Happiest Day, all 3 finally free, finally at peace. This interpretation is beautiful, narratively satisfying. It gives Cassidy's story a proper conclusion. She doesn't remain trapped in hatred forever. She completes what she set out to do, destroys the man who murdered her in every possible form, and then moves on. But it's not confirmed. It's one interpretation among several. And that ambiguity is intentional, because Security Breach also introduces elements that complicate everything. The underground pizzeria beneath the Pizzaplex contains the remains of the old locations. You can find the FNAF 6 location, burned but recognizable. You can find old animatronic parts. And in one area, you can find something that looks like a shrine, a collection of items arranged with clear intention. Some players have found references to Golden Freddy in this area, not the character himself, but symbols. Yellow, 5. References that could be coincidental or could be significant. If Golden Freddy, or some remnant of the spirits that comprised him, still exists in the modern era, then the story isn't over. The spirits might not be free. The cycle might still be continuing. And then there's the mimic. The Ruin DLC for Security Breach and the Tales from the Pizzaplex books introduce the Mimic, an AI that learns by observing and imitating behavior. The Mimic was created by a Fazbear Entertainment engineer who taught it to copy his movements while playing with his son. But when the son died in a car accident, the engineer's grief and rage caused him to beat the Mimic viciously, and the Mimic learned that behavior too. The Mimic became violent. It started copying the worst human behaviors: murder, deception, cruelty. And it's been hiding in the Pizzaplex's underground, influencing events, possibly responsible for some of the horrors that have occurred. Some theories now propose that Glitchtrap isn't William Afton at all. It's the Mimic, imitating William's behavior patterns from the scanned circuit boards. The Mimic learned to act like William, to think like William, and it's been masquerading as him this entire time. If this is true, then William never escaped Ultimate Custom Night. He's still there, still trapped. Cassidy is still tormenting him. And everything happening in the modern era isn't William's return. It's the Mimic creating chaos while wearing William's identity like a mask. This would mean Cassidy succeeded. Her revenge is complete and eternal. William will never escape. And the modern threats are something else entirely, something new that needs to be addressed separately from the old tragedies. But again, this is interpretation. The Mimic's exact relationship to Glitchtrap, to William, to the old lore, remains deliberately unclear. Scott Cawthon and Steel Wool Studios have created a situation where multiple interpretations are valid, and the community is left to debate which is correct. For Golden Freddy specifically, this means his ending is uncertain. He might be free. He might still be active. He might be done with his story, or he might have one final role to play. And perhaps that uncertainty is the point, because Golden Freddy has always represented the unanswered questions, the mysteries that resist simple solutions. And maintaining that ambiguity preserves what makes the character special. But let's examine what we can extract from the novel trilogy, because while the novels are explicitly separate continuity from the games, they explore similar themes and characters in ways that reveal Scott's intentions. In the novel trilogy, the character of Michael Brooks possesses the Golden Freddy suit. Michael was one of the 5 missing children, murdered by William Afton and stuffed into the suit. But Golden Freddy in the novels has unique properties. He can appear and disappear. He exists in a state between physical and spiritual, and he's the most powerful of the spirits, able to affect reality in ways the others cannot. Michael Brooks is driven by sadness more than anger. He's mourning his own death and the deaths of his friends. He wants justice, but he also wants peace. And throughout the trilogy, Golden Freddy serves as a protector of sorts. He helps the protagonists. He reveals information. He's not purely vengeful. He's complex. In The Fourth Closet, the final novel, there's a scene where Golden Freddy appears as a giant, nightmarish entity, towering and powerful, defending the other spirits against William's final plan. He's become something transcendent, something that exists beyond normal possession. And at the trilogy's conclusion, Michael Brooks and the other spirits find peace. They're freed. They move on. Golden Freddy disappears, his purpose complete. The novels present a version of Golden Freddy's story with a definitive ending: tragedy, haunting, justice, and finally release. It's the story Cassidy's version could have, should have, if she chooses to let go. But the novel version of Michael Brooks isn't Cassidy, isn't the crying child. He's a completely different character created for the novels. So while the novels show what Golden Freddy's arc could look like, they don't directly answer what happens in the games. What they do reveal is theme. Scott's consistent interest in exploring how children's spirits trapped in animatronics can find freedom, how vengeance can transform into peace, how the cycle of violence and haunting can be broken. Every version of Golden Freddy across books and games explores this theme, and the through line is always that Golden Freddy is special, different, more powerful and more important than the others. In the games, this manifests as Cassidy being the one who traps William in hell. In the novels, it's Michael Brooks being the most powerful spirit and the key to defeating William's final plan. In Fazbear Frights, it's Andrew being the spirit who refuses to let William die, whose will literally keeps a corpse alive through supernatural power. Golden Freddy is always the exception, always the spirit who matters most, always the one whose choice determines the outcome. And that brings us to the core of what Golden Freddy represents in FNAF's narrative structure. He's not just a character, he's a symbol of consequence. Every tragedy in FNAF stems from specific choices. William chose to murder children. Henry chose to create animatronics that could be used for that purpose. The company chose profits over safety. The older brother chose to torment the crying child. Each choice created consequences that rippled outward, creating more tragedy, more horror, more suffering. Golden Freddy is where those consequences converge. He's the result of the bite of 83 if the crying child is part of him. He's the result of the missing children incident through Cassidy. He's the result of Springlock technology, of Fredbear's creation, of every decision that led to children dying in proximity to animatronics, and his refusal to rest, his determination to keep William suffering, represents the ultimate consequence. William can kill, he can destroy, he can corrupt, but he cannot escape what he's done. Golden Freddy ensures that. The other spirits found peace because their deaths, while tragic and unjust, were not bound up in the same web of interconnected causality. They were victims, yes, but their deaths were in points, terrible but finite. Golden Freddy's deaths, whether one or two, are different. The crying child's death caused his father to spiral into obsession with conquering death. Cassidy's death was part of William's experiments with that obsession. The two deaths are linked through William's arc, through the progression of horror. So Golden Freddy becomes the embodiment of that progression, the proof that actions have inescapable consequences. And his presence throughout the series is a constant reminder that no matter how far the story moves forward, no matter how many years pass, the original sins remain, until they're resolved, until justice is served, until the one who caused it all faces the full weight of what he's done. That's why Ultimate Custom Night exists. That's why Cassidy traps William there. It's not just personal revenge for her murder. It's cosmic justice for everything William set in motion. The crying child's death, the missing children, the creation of the funtime animatronics designed to kill, the destruction of Henry's family, the countless employees who died in Springlock failures or animatronic accidents. All of it is William's fault, and Golden Freddy makes him answer for all of it. This is why the question of whether Cassidy ever lets go is so important. Because if she does, it means forgiveness is possible. It means the cycle can end. It means that even the worst consequences can eventually be resolved and peace can be found. But if she doesn't, if she keeps William trapped forever, then the message is different. Some actions are unforgivable. Some consequences are eternal. Some sins cannot be washed away. Both messages are valid. Both are thematically rich. And Scott has deliberately kept the answer ambiguous so that the story can support both interpretations. What we can say with certainty is that Golden Freddy's importance extends far beyond his gameplay mechanics or his individual appearances. He's woven into the fundamental narrative structure of Five Nights at Freddy's. He's the character who connects the earliest tragedy to the latest developments. He's the bridge between FNAF 4-Byte of '83 and Ultimate Custom Night's eternal torment. He's the proof that in this universe, the past never truly stays buried. And examining the community's relationship with Golden Freddy reveals something else important: the theories, the debates, the endless analysis. Golden Freddy is the character the community has spent the most time trying to solve, more than the crying child's identity, more than the FNAF timeline, more than the question of which ending is canon. Golden Freddy is the mystery people return to again and again, because solving it feels like solving FNAF itself. If you can definitively answer who Golden Freddy is, what souls possess him, what his purpose is, where his story ends, then you've understood the core of what Scott Cawthon created. You've pierced through the ambiguity and found the truth beneath. Except the ambiguity is the truth. The mystery is the answer. Scott has said in interviews that he doesn't want to over-explain everything, that some questions are better left to interpretation, that the community's theories and debates are part of the experience, not obstacles to be overcome. Golden Freddy embodies this philosophy. He's the character who will never be fully explained because full explanation would diminish what makes him special. He's Schrodinger's animatronic. Both one soul and two. Both freed and trapped. Both finished and ongoing. And he exists in that superposition intentionally so that FNAF can be different things to different people. If you want Golden Freddy to be purely Cassidy, a single spirit consumed by vengeance, the evidence supports that. If you want him to be the crying child and Cassidy together, a tragic fusion of two victims, the evidence supports that too. If you want his story to end in Princess Quest with final peace, you can interpret it that way. If you want him still active, still relevant in the modern era, that interpretation is equally valid. This isn't a flaw,